All right, guys, so this is going to be my review of the Camaro ZL1 1LE. I'm just going to do a little bit of a drive. We're going to pull over. I'm going to talk to you about some of the highlighted features of this car. And we're going to go for more of a drive. So I'm going to kind of compare and contrast this monster to a GT350, 350R, because I've owned so many of those and had so many of those over the years. But you can hear it. It's pretty loud in here. This car's loud. It's a monster. It's got a ton of power. And I'm absolutely loving it. This thing is so damn good. That's factory exhaust. There's no modifications done to this car. But the one thing I'll show you guys right now is, so it's not tram lining and pulling like the GT350R. Now, if you guys know what's going on with a lot of those cars, in 2020, they put the GT500 suspension, which kind of eliminated that, and I don't think they feel as good. I think the 16 to the 19s are the best as far as the most engaging GT350s. But we have a little bit of a break in the weather. It's been nonstop rain and cold, and you saw my video. I put the Michelin Pilot Sport 4S tires on this car because the R compound Goodyears were absolutely dangerous. Could not drive the car at all. But on the highway, on a smooth highway, the suspension is not too stiff. I think it's perfect. And of course, everybody in the rearview mirror, they want to pull up and race you in this car because it's so damn aggressive. Oh my God, this thing is super, super impressive. So I'm gonna pull over, we're gonna talk some more about the ZL1 1LE. I'll show you the outside features. This car is simply badass. All right, guys, just pulled over. I wanna show you guys the highlights and discuss a little bit about the 6th gen Camaro, which is based on General Motors' Alpha platform. But just look at this car. That's just something that I wanna emphasize right now, is how menacing and badass this car looks in terms of the style. I mean, look at this thing. You got the dive planes, you got the giant front grille, you got the lower front lip. This car, of course, in black looks pretty much the best in my opinion. You got the satin black on the hood, and then you have the nice big carbon fiber bulge with the ZL1 badging on the hood. I mean, there's just a lot of design attributes of this car that I think are out of the park perfect. Also, look at the size of that tire up front. That's a 305/30/19. That's the Pilot Sport 4S, and out back, we got the 325. Also out back, we have a exposed, which is really cool, exposed carbon fiber wing. This actually adds real downforce, and it was also designed by Pratt & Miller. If you guys don't know who they are, those are the guys that build the Corvette and the Camaro race cars, aside from other cars as well. So just looking at this car, aesthetically, it looks badass, and it is a badass machine. Very, very different car compared to the Dodge, and very different compared to the GT350 in a lot of ways. Number one, this car has a lot more technology, a lot more engineering in the platform, and it's a lot stiffer in the platform. And I'm gonna explain to you why in a couple of moments. We're gonna pop the hood, I'm gonna show you what we're gonna get. But let's just go over to the outside. So we have some lightweight forged 19-inch wheels, whereas the standard ZL1 comes with a 20-inch wheel. We have a 6-piston caliper with a 15+ inch 2-piece rotor. You can kind of see that there. So those are 2-piece rotors. They're not slotted or drilled. It's just full surface area sweep. Out back, we just have a standard 4-piston with a standard single-piece rotor as well. Now, General Motors has been using this braking hardware well over 10 years. I mean, these calipers look almost identical to what I had on my CTS-Vs, version 2, version 3s, and also a lot of the Corvettes as well. So they're not really doing much. They're pretty much just going into the parts bin to kind of see what they have and kind of stick with what works. Now, something I want to show you guys, if you could see it, if you could see right there. So these brake calipers have a removable pin right here, okay? So by removing this pin, it enables the pads to come in and out, makes pad changes a lot easier. Now, the one disadvantage to having a removable bridge on a brake caliper is that it changes the radial stiffness of the caliper. The stiffer the caliper, the more you're going to get as far as pedal feel and also clamping force. So when you remove that bridge, even though you're putting a bolt, the caliper is flexing. That's just physics. That's just the way it works. I will tell you now that the brakes in this car are good, but they're not GT350R good. In my opinion, I think the GT350R has better brake pedal feel, better bite, and better stopping power. Also, this car's heavier than a GT350R. So weighed in, this car's about 3,900 pounds, give or take. You know, that's what they're kind of claiming online. Whereas my GT350R on my registration was like 3,650. So there's a few hundred pounds difference in weight between this and a 350R. There's several hundred pounds difference between this and a GT500. GT500, a new generation or a final generation that they released, was so much heavier. And I just think this is a better driving car in a lot of ways. So I'm gonna pop the hood. I'm gonna show you guys exactly what we're working with as far as the powertrain. But if you look up front, you know, this aerodynamics, this is all function. You got the flow tie, so the air goes through here. It gets extracted through there because this generation, the LT4 generates a hell of a lot of heat. So all of these dive planes, this was not done just for aesthetics. This is actually funneling air through the side of the car, all through the side skirts and everything. So this car was, you know, tested in the wind tunnel, and really, really cool stuff that went into this. I tell you, very, very impressive car. And you guys saw it on the intro of the drive. I mean, look, now the sun's coming out. So now you can actually really appreciate the car being detailed and cleaned and being all in black. It's just absolutely sinister. So let's pop the hood. I'll show you the LT4 powertrain, and I'll talk a little bit more about the Alpha platform and what makes this platform significantly better than the S550 Mustang. All right, guys, got the hood popped. Before we go and talk about the drivetrain, just want to show you guys here. So that is a rain guard. So if you're riding this car on the track, you just simply unbolt this here, and it's going to give a lot more heat extraction from this engine when it's running hot. Now, General Motors used the LT4 on the C7 Z06, and if you guys go back historically, they had a lot of problems with cooling and the car's heat soaking like crazy on the track. So this particular car, that's another reason why they made this a removable piece right here to let a lot of the heat out. Now, this is not a dry sump like the Z06. This is a regular standard oil pan. It's got a 10 quart capacity, and it's just a baffled oil pan, so there's nothing crazy. You got a single throttle body. There's really nothing much to it, but 650 horsepower, 650 foot-pounds of torque. But the number one thing, and this is why I want to tell you guys why this platform is so much better than the S550, a couple of things. And I've showed this in a lot of my review videos. When you see any car, I don't care if it's a Kia, if it's a BMW, if it's a General Motors product, when you see a car that's got these solid, strong aluminum castings where your front suspension is mounting to, and then those castings are triangulated to the cowl, like you see here, okay? That just proves that this car is going to have a great front end, and it's going to have exceptional steering and rigidity. Now, the way this is designed in the Alpha platform, you know, this is aluminum. This is all triangulated through the cowl, and then in the bottom, the front subframe is aluminum, and it's got an aluminum shear panel that connects the subframe points to the rocker panels on the left and the right. So it's basically taking the entire front structure of this car and making it as solid as it can possibly be. Now, this car doesn't have magnetic ride. This has the Multimatic DSSV spool dampeners. Now, something really cool that I just found out about the car is that if you undo these 3 bolts and you drop the suspension down, this is a locating pin. If you rotate this, you just put like, looks like a 13 or 15, yeah, like a 13 or 15 millimeter ratchet. You could rotate the entire upper assembly and get like 2.5 to 2.75 degrees negative camber just by rotating this around. So instead of slotting and shimming the lower struts, because this is a McPherson strut suspension. Now, when you look at the architecture of this car from the engineering, the front suspension looks very similar to an S550 Mustang, but the advantage is with the aluminum castings where this is mounting, it's got a much stiffer front end and the aluminum subframe. That's where you could feel it when you hit bumps, how much better and stiffer this car is from an S550 Mustang. Now, other than that, weight distribution is kind of about the same, you know, based on all these cars, muscle cars, but this thing's got a ton of power. But let me tell you something, it's a hell of a lot of fun to drive this car. I'm just gonna show you right now. So another cool thing about this car, in terms of the architecture, you know, it's a unibody car. It's not the lightest car, but this particular car has an electronic rear differential. Now, it has its own ECU, and the way the diff works, it's got hydraulic clutch packs. So The computers with the performance traction management system and all the modes you're going to be in are going to redirect how much hydraulic pressure goes to the left side or the right side of the car to make sure you're planting the power to the ground. It also has asymmetrical drive shafts, so one drive shaft, one axle shaft is a lot thicker than the other, and that was designed for wheel hop. And this goes back, you know, the Alpha platform with General Motors, believe it or not, is well over 10 years old. And this goes back when they originally introduced this, was the Cadillac CTV Sport, okay? I believe that was around 2014. That's when this chassis was pretty much introduced, or maybe it was a little earlier than that. And then they kind of fine-tuned it along the way into the final generation, which now is phased out. So this car is no longer made, and that's pretty much where we're at. Another thing, too, regarding practicality, you know, regarding the Camaro versus Mustang wars, is cargo space. You can see here the issue with the Camaros, and this goes back to the 5th gen Camaro, you don't have a large opening to throw larger stuff in it. So the Mustang has the advantage in terms of cargo space. Also, this is the newer generation. So this has the revised taillights. Now, if you go back, you see some photos. The 2018s had a little bit of a different taillight. I think they look good. Also, you have flared out stainless steel exhaust tips. But the one thing this car doesn't have, it doesn't have like a full diffuser on the bottom, and it doesn't have flat paneling. And a reason for that is that General Motors realized this engine has so much heat dissipation issues, especially when you're running these cars hard, they had to leave everything open on the bottom for heat dissipation. So there's fins in the transmission, there's fins up top, and it's a matter of getting the airflow into the car and dissipating through the bottom. But like I said, so far, you know, I haven't really been pushing it because it's winter, but I think this car is extremely impressive, and I'm also going to show you something that's very important that separates this car from the S550 as well. All right, guys, let's move over to the interior quickly. So when you look at the interior, we have really nice Alcantara up on the upper bolster and all down here, two-tone materials. It actually looks a lot better than an S550. Now, you do have hard plastics, okay, but here's the situation. Whereas on the S550 and on the Dodge, the material is like a vinyl and it has a very like shiny sheen to it. This plastic is knocked down that if you look at it from a distance, you would almost think it was like a Napa gray leather. So it's actually not as offensive as you would think. But like I said, it is a General Motors product, so you're not going to get leather. Versus like on a Cadillac Blackwing, they stitch everything with like a shiny grade vinyl, and I really don't like it. I think this actually is a pretty better representation of how it could have been executed a little bit better. Now, also the seats. These are Recaro seats, but check this out. The pedals, in terms of the position and the seating position, is totally different than an S550 Mustang. So what do I mean by that? Is on the Camaro, you actually drop into the seat, and you're driving the car a little bit lower to the ground. That's just the way it feels dynamically. You have a nice Alcantara steering wheel. It's not super thick. It's actually right diameter, right size. Everything is in the right placement. The shifter is absolutely incredible. One of the best shifters you're gonna get. One of the best manual gearboxes you're gonna get. But here's the deal. So on my GT350s, and actually the main reason why I sold my 350R was I was having a lot of hip pain and issues shifting that car based on the bolstering of the seat and the position of the seat. So if you guys go back historically to the 60s, whether it's a 65 Mustang compared to a 67 Camaro, they also had very different seating positions. So whereas, this is the way, my opinion, when you're in a Mustang, you're kind of sitting on the pedals, on, you know, as far as your placement. When you're in the Camaro, you're sitting below the pedals. It's a very, very different driving position, and it's actually more comfortable than an S550 so far. I have not had any issues shifting. The seats are also heated and cooled. You got nice Alcantara, nice leather, deviated stitching. The one thing I think they should have done on this car is, I think, being that this is the track focus car, they should have just eliminated the back seat altogether. But from what people have been commenting, this car has lighter glass. They lightened up the foam in the back seat. So they did a couple of other things to kind of reduce weight, but I still feel they should have did the same execution as the 350R, pull out the back seat completely, remove some of the carpeting from the trunk, it's just not needed, and kind of lighten up the car a little bit more, you know, to make it a little bit lighter, at least get it down to 3,600 pounds. But like I said, it's got a pretty significant power to weight ratio, and it does not feel slow by any means. So that's pretty much all we're going to talk about on the ZL1 1LE. Let's get the camera strapped in. Let's go for some more drives, and I'll comment more on the dynamics of this car, and also I'll give you guys my final thoughts on what I think of it. But so far, this car is absolutely incredible. Get really good pops and gurgles, and this car gets a lot of attention. Now, another thing too, even though the Shelbys, the GT350s, and this are using the same style Tremec, the one in the GT350 feels totally different. It's a little bit tighter in terms of going into gear. That's just observation. This still feels awesome. There's nothing wrong with this at all. Look, I'm hitting some pretty bad bumps with the Multimatic suspension, and I don't have any complaints because I have a better driving position. It's lower. I have good seats, really good seats, and the pedal placement just seems to be a lot better in this car than the S550. That's just for me. That's my opinion. I mean, I've had an S550 since 2014. I probably have 100,000 miles on that platform, so I kind of know it pretty well. I mean, the power that this thing puts down it's just unbelievable. That's what you don't get in the Shelby. You get in the Shelby, you get a more linear power where you have to actually rev it out and, you know, extract that power. You don't get that torque. And that's where this car kind of fits in. Now, where on the Hellcats and those red eyes and all of those things, you get a ton of power on those too, but you don't get the chassis. That's the difference between all of these cars. You know, everything is going to feel a little bit different. I think the Challenger is pretty much the most true to nature muscle car, if you want to call it a muscle car, just because it's big, it's heavy, it's got a lot of power, and it goes great in a straight line. But it's not a, you know, corner carver. And I kind of like a car that could kind of do a little bit of everything. So I'm just going to jump on the highway because, like I said, this car's got to be opened up. You can't really enjoy something with this much power on like local roads. And that's another thing I want to emphasize on how different this car is compared to like a 350. Whereas a 350 or even like a lower power like a GT4 Porsche, you could actually enjoy that car or those type of cars with lower horsepower, lower torque on your favorite back roads a lot easier and safer and use more to gearing than you can with something like this or a GT500. It's just because the power band of this thing, you can't stretch its legs. You got no room, you know, safely. That's where this becomes a track-focused car. You really got to take this thing to a good track like Road Atlanta or VIR, where you could like really get this thing up to a very high top speed and, you know, exercise the power and use it for what it is. Now, being at the front suspension, we got that Multimatic suspension, and there's no rubber isolators in the top mounts, so you hear it. You're going to hear a lot more noise coming into the cabin. Doesn't really bother me. It's a track-focused car. But when you're in the seat, it's so damn comfortable, you don't realize that you're in a track-focused car. Transmission, I can shift it with my fingers. It's like a joke. But once this thing is at speed, you could feel the spring rates and the compression and rebound. And the weird thing is, this car will hop you out of the seat, but it's a different type of hop that you're getting from the multi-link rear suspension. Now, the rear suspension of this car is all stamped steel. You're not getting anything sophisticated with that. You do have the E Diff, which is the advantage over the competition. But all the suspension arms are stamped steel, but you could upgrade that to, like, you know, stuff from BMR or Spone Engineering. There's a lot of other car brands out there in the aftermarket. But the car ride's great. I mean, look at this. Like I said, the steering is not as reactive as the GT350R as far as like pulling you all over the road. I just think it's just a little bit different geometry and a much stiffer front end. That's probably contributing to that. Whereas on the Shelby, every little bump, it would kind of knock you into the next lane. But look, I mean, this thing stays pretty true. We're at factory alignment. We didn't touch anything on this car yet. Now, I'm kind of curious to see how it'll feel by rotating those strut assembly top hats 180 to get the 2.75 degrees negative camber on a back road. I think it's going to feel a hell of a lot better. And that's the thing, you run out of room, you hit 100 miles an hour so quickly. It's like, where do you take this car to like really stretch its legs? You got to go way upstate. You got to go early in the morning because not only does it look badass, it's pretty loud on the outside. You got the pops and bangs. But no, this is a very impressive package. It really is. I almost wish that I picked up one of these way back in the days when they first came out. Now this car is like impossible to get. They don't make it anymore. And there's like 2 of them. I looked in the entire nation. There's 2 ZL1 1LEs, 2023s, that are going for $50,000 over MSRP. So that just shows you where you're at. Visibility from the back is not the greatest, but it's also in the rearview mirror. I'm not distracted by the wing, whereas on the 350R, I always mention that in my videos on how distracting that wing was in the rearview mirror. I can never see if there was a cop, pulling up behind me. In this one here, it seems to be placed far better than that, and I actually really like that as well. Oh my God, the freaking power and torque that this thing's got. Holy shit. On the highway, this car is totally livable, and on some of the worst roads in New York, even though it's stiff and it's gonna bounce you around, I still rather have this suspension than the magnetic ride in the Shelby. I just don't think Ford did a good job with the magnetic ride, in my opinion, for like where I live and where I drive. I think they could have done a much better job. And I also, like on my Alpha, I like a very, very stiff suspension. That's another reason why I love my AMG GTR. It's extremely stiff. And I like that in the car, But this thing is, God. You see, like I'm hard on the brakes right there, and that's where I could tell right away that this car does not have that braking feel that a GT350R or the GT500 has. Those cars have, if you look at the hardware, the caliper on a GT500 is even bigger than a 350R. It's just a massive, solid, fixed bridge caliper with a gigantic rotor. And like I said, I just think that's one of the little trade-offs on this car, is that it doesn't have that snap, bite, and pedal feel that the Shelbys have. Definitely stops better than the Dodge, and I think that's because of the weight. I think a Dodge is like 600 pounds heavier than this car. So we're gonna go on this local road here, and look, it's hopping me. You can probably see it in the camera, but I'm totally comfortable. I'm not complaining about it. Yeah, this is an awesome car. It really is. It gives you, it's got the looks, it's got the handling, it's got good front end, it's got an awesome transmission. It's rare, so I think they're going to hold their values. I hope they hold their values, but there's a big shift right now in the car market, so cars are not bringing what they were 2 years ago. But I think long term, a car like this, where they made, I think there was like, somebody mentioned they made 4,000 ZL1s. Now, I don't think they made 4,000 of this version. I think they probably made 4,000 total ZL1s, and that's across the board from coupe, convertible. How many of those had the 10-speed automatics? But now the roads are a little wet this morning, and I could definitely feel that E Diff kicking in. You got your pops and bangs, but at least it doesn't sound like a BMW M3 with the pops and bangs. I hated that in that car. I don't know why. It's like a inline 6-cylinder turbo trying to sound like this. This is a badass American supercharged V8. Big displacement, big blower. But yeah, this car is super impressive. My God. I had a 5th Gen Camaro. I don't know if a lot of you guys, I mentioned that in the channel. Back in 2009, right when they first came out, because it was like the whole retro styling. Everybody was excited to get one. I heavily modified it, and the platform in that car was based on an Australian car. I think it was called a Holden. Terrible platform. Had a lot of issues with the driveline angles and everything else, where you would romp on the car, you would blow up your axles, you blow up your diff, you break your drive shaft. The car was so flawed, but it still looked so cool. And then in 2012, they kind of like revised that with the ZL1. They changed the whole back suspension. And then they came out the Z28, which I still love. The Z28, I think that's a killer car. It's got the spool valve dampeners, and you got carbon ceramic brakes, and the LS7, which was an iconic NA motor from General Motors. But this fucking thing throws you in the seat, my God. So the reason why I never went with a Z28, as much as I love that car, I don't trust the platform because I had a 5th gen and I knew all the issues that were wrong with that platform, and I think they kind of fixed it to some degree, but they kind of band-aided it, you know? This is the platform to have, is the 6th gen. And they no longer make it. The Camaro is finished. That was a big hop right there. But my God, this car fucking hauls ass. Steering is great. It's very, very precise. It's very neutral. You can feel that you have a really big tire on the front of the car, but it's not twitchy like the GT350s. The GT350R on this road would be like pulling me all over the place. Steering weight is also a little bit heavier than the Shelby. And I think it comes down to what you like. I think they're all awesome cars. You know, you can't go wrong with any of these cars. If you have the opportunity to even own one, I think, you know, consider yourself blessed and thankful to even get a hand to own these cars today, because they're never going to make these again. This is going to be it. If the Camaro name comes back, it's probably going to be an EV or a 4-cylinder EV or hybrid. Who the hell knows what they're going to do? But this generation of car is no longer going to happen. So I'm going to pull over. I'm going to give you guys my final thoughts on the Camaro ZL1 1LE. This is like the final edition, 2023. One of the last ones they ever made. And I love this car. Absolutely love it. And I'll give you guys my conclusion after this. So stay tuned for the rest of the video. All right, guys, we're back for my little drive and little review of the 2023 Camaro ZL1 1LE. So first off, what do I think about this car? I think it's amazing. Let me just get out. We'll talk some more about it. I'll kind of conclude this video for you guys. Overall, everything about this car I love. If you guys can't hear it from my enthusiasm driving it, I love the seats. I love the driving position, the transmission, the power. Another thing too regarding like aesthetics, I do think the Camaro, this 6th gen aesthetic, looks much more modern than the S550 Mustang. Even though the S550 is more going for that classic double eyebrow look in the dash, this just makes it look a lot more modern. Now, Ford put the stupid screen on the dash with the Dark Horse, which I'm not a huge fan of, but that's where these cars are going. So I do think this has a very nice, modern, quality execution of the interior. It doesn't really feel cheap, but overall, the car feels awesome. It's a blast to drive. It's got great styling, great ergonomics, incredible power, just a presence on the road, man. The suspension tuning, another thing too I want to talk about. I see a lot of guys on eBay that have these Multimatic suspensions that are torn out of these cars for sale, and I don't understand what the hell they're putting in their cars. Maybe they're doing something much more advanced, you know, like a remote reservoir, Öhlins, or, you know, Motons or something like that. But I'll tell you right now, on the street, on the highway, when this car builds speed and you're actually loading up that suspension, the spring rates, the shock tuning feel absolutely incredible. Feels absolutely incredible. It reminds me of my AMG GTR. In my opinion, like I said, the chassis is far superior than the S550 in a lot of ways, but they're very, very different cars. So this car's execution is very different than the Dodge and also from the Shelby. Now, the one thing that I'll stress too is I feel that the braking performance on the Shelbys, whether it's a 350R or a 500, is better than the Camaro ZL1 1LE. I just think it's just because of the hardware. You know, you have a much larger caliper with a fixed bridge. That's definitely going to do a lot to it. But, you know, this car with the electronic diff, with the very stiff front end, with the aluminum subframe, it's a really impressive car. Now, it's not twitchy. It doesn't vibrate, and it doesn't send all of those sensations into the cabin like a Shelby GT350. Whereas what I'm going to say is a 350R is going to be a more sensory, visceral experience. It's not as fast. It doesn't have the torque. It doesn't have the front end chassis build quality, all of that. But you're getting vibration through the pedals, through the shifter, through the console. It sounds like the engine at 8,000 RPMs is going to explode and kill you through the firewall. That adds to the drama of that car. That's why that car is so special. This car is special in its own right for what it does, the fact that they're no longer going to make it, and it's such an unbelievably capable package out of the box that I'm going to tell you right now, if you guys are looking at Porsches, Ferraris, or any of these cars, not one of those exotic cars is going to give you what this car gives you for the money. Under 100 grand, these are, these stickered for like 85 grand or so. Now they're going for over sticker if you can find one, but here's the deal. You're not going to find one of these cars. There's just none of them for sale. Look at all the auctions, up in Scottsdale. None of these cars are coming up for sale. They're selling like the Black Panther edition, which was like a ZL1 with the bigger wing on the back with the flat black paint. A bunch of those went up for auction recently. They're going for over 100 grand, but This car, you just don't see them. You don't see them around. You're not at car shows, Cars and Coffee. You just don't see it. And I think having something rare and unique like this is freaking really, really cool. Also, too, I love this car without stripes. I mean, could you imagine putting stripes in this car? It would totally kill it. I think stripes are more dedicated towards the Mustang, not towards the Camaro. But anyway, thanks a lot for coming along for the ride. Like I said, the weather's a little cold. You can kind of see the roads are still wet. So I can't really push this car on my favorite back roads. We're gonna have to wait a couple of months. As soon as the weather clears up and the roads thaw out, we're gonna take this car up to some of my favorite back roads where I do a lot of my drive videos, like on the AMGs, the Ferraris, all of that. And we're gonna see what this car can do. But I already know this car is super capable. It's got the confidence, it's got the comfort. It also has a better driving position. It just feels better to drive this car than it does a Shelby, whereas when I get out of Shelby, I have a lot of hip pain, I have a lot of leg pain. It's just because the seating position is so uniquely different between all of these models. But like I said, if you own a Dodge Hellcat, if you own a Camaro ZL1, if you own a Shelby GT350, consider yourselves very fortunate to own some of the most amazing cars ever to come out of America, and they're never gonna make these cars again. So I highly suggest, depending on what you guys want, pick your weapon, go out and buy one, because I think the future for these cars is over. It's never gonna happen again, and I think this is the last hurrah for General Motors and the Camaro to come out with a package like this, because this thing is freaking incredible. So I'm tired of talking. I'm gonna get back in and enjoy the rest of the day driving the car. Stay tuned for more content. Also, I wanna hear from more ZL1 owners that own these cars. Post your feedback below. If there's anything I forgot in the video, didn't discuss, because I just had the car for a couple of weeks, post in the comments below. Let me know your thoughts about the car. Also, did you come from a GT350? Did you come from a Hellcat? What made you buy this car? But listen, it's not as precise of a machine as my AMG GTR. That's just a totally different car in a totally different league, the way the car is built and the architecture with double wishbone suspension and all of that. But like I said, the multi-link in this car works really well. It doesn't feel as, I would say, neutral and confident inspiring like an S550. I think for some reason the architecture of the Mustang feels a little bit more safer in the back end when you're pushing it through part throttle in a corner. But this does have the E Diff. You do have plenty of rubber on the back. Just make sure you exercise the power, safely and don't do anything stupid. But this car rewards you with so many thrills. I just can't believe it for what you get for the money. Absolutely incredible. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned. There's going to be more content on this car as weather permits. But right now it's going to go away for a little while because the weather is just so unpredictable and cold. But this was really fun sharing this car with you on the last couple of videos. And stay tuned. We're going to bring it back as soon as winter is over. And please subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content. I'll see you guys in the next one soon.
So fake.